Welcome back to Unfiltered, presented by Hustle. I'm Jay Skyline,
I'm in James.
and this is the first 10. And yeah, no, we first thing we're going to talk about is that national title game, man. Uh, it is the biggest blowout in any form of national title or bowl game history, if you count it as bowl game. 65-7. Georgia back to back national champions. TCU went out there and proved again why they are for most people considered the third university of Texas, if not further down. There's a lot of Division One schools in Texas.
Yeah.
I feel like most people look at Texas, the University of Texas, as like the Longhorns is that. Texas A&M, I would say, is probably the second school of Texas for the last few years. And then right now, for the recency, I would say TCU. But like honestly, like there's Baylor, there's Texas A&M, there's Houston. There's a couple other schools that I'm not naming. Texas Tech. So I'm like, there's a lot of schools in Texas but like I would say in the last probably 10, 15 years, TCU's been the third team. And then it's Georgia, which has always been the number one school in Georgia. Georgia Tech's never. I mean, Georgia Tech's won national titles like a long time ago, but it's like, when's the last time we've legitimately thought of Georgia Tech as the school of Georgia? And Georgia Tech is actually the school that's in Atlanta. Georgia, the University of Georgia is in Athens, Georgia, which, from what I understand, is still like maybe a 2.5 hour drive from Atlanta. So yeah, it's different. So how are you looking at this, James?
I don't know. I mean, what's even point of watching? After like halftime, it's like, all right, we'll stick around, but like, y'all were getting blown out, and there was like no change in the game.
There was one big play. It was on the drive. They scored the touchdown. There was a 60-yard completion. After that, I believe they did not have any game TCU that was more than 30 yards in a play for the rest of the game. Damn. Also, I feel bad because like I've been with the TCU quarterback because I didn't know. So when I found out his name was something, what is his name? His last name was Duggan, and I was like, all right. I was playing around with it when I first found out. Like, oh yeah, like da da da. I forget what his first name. And it was like, oh da da da. HACKSAW Duggan. Because I just like I've never heard nobody else with that last name. Then I looked it up, and
Max Duggan.
Max Duggan. It's really his dad or grandfather. I forgot right now, but HACKSAW Jim Duggan. For one, the first Royal Rumble winner in WWE history is either, look it up real quick as you got it on your phone. It's either his dad or his grandfather. I forget. That's just dope to me, Loki. Like, so that one was dope because he in my era, but he would always pop up like in the mid 2000s when I was watching in like a Royal Rumble or randomly on SmackDown or something. He was on SmackDown for a few years, like in 2002 to 2005. He wasn't doing nothing wild because he never won a title. He's one of those dudes that was just in the WWE. He's a Hall of Famer. Again, first Royal Rumble winner ever, but he never won any titles. But yeah, I did not know until I looked it up. He is actually related to HACKSAW Jim Duggan. I was like, that is dope. Because I'm like, that was the only thing after I found that out, I'm like, I'm rock with you. I don't even know why. Like, I guess it's just like HACKSAW was never one of them wrestlers that was ever. It's just like everybody rock with HACKSAW Jim Duggan.
Yeah, the 4x4.
That was always the thing that like even like when I looked it up, somebody was like, why did they call him HACKSAW if he had a 4x4?
Wood with him. Like, he was always with it. But it's a crowd favorite. Definitely.
And the wild thing about Georgia is like it's basically fully conceded that their quarterback is going to be like a backup quarterback in the NFL. He's not a NFL quarterback. Like it's just, I mean, he might get a shot somewhere. People looked at Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott and people like that in that degree. Like I think he's going to be a third or fourth round pick, compared to Max Duggan, who I think will be a first or second round pick. But that's the difference between playing with a team who has everything and a team that doesn't have everything. When we look at Georgia, everybody on Georgia's team outside of the quarterback are going in the first 3 rounds. Like linemen, defensive players, wide receivers, tight end. The tight ends are fucking freaks, man. Like the Georgia's players are just man amongst men. Like it was known going into the game that TCU didn't have the same. Like this is the thing. Georgia won last year's national title. TCU, I think, and I will look it up before I get it wrong. I think they went 5-7 last year and fired their coach because I know this was the first year for their coach. Oh, my bad. It was worse. Oh no, they did go 5-7 last year, 3-6 in conference. So yeah, TCU went from 5-7 in conference to the national title. So obviously they do not have the same players as Georgia. Also, being honest, and I think I talked about this a little last week. TCU won a bunch of close games. Like all their games were close games through their conference schedule, and They lost in the Big 12 title game. So that was their only loss of the year, though, and they were the only other undefeated team with Georgia at that point. So they were still put into the playoffs because they only had lost one game, and most of the teams had lost more than one game at that point. And again, they beat Michigan. Also, Georgia barely beat Ohio State, so I think a lot of people look at the Georgia-Ohio State game as the national title game since the field goal that lost the game was kicked at midnight. It's like that's the sucky part about what happened with this game last night is last week's two games might be two of the greatest college football games of all time. Like the TCU Michigan game and the Georgia-Ohio State game legitimately have claims of being, if they're not both top 2 all time, they're top 10 college football games.
Yeah.
Like both of those games, like literally the idea that the man kicked that field goal in the Georgia-Ohio State game with the clocks going down to 0 and missed that shit. Like it was New Year's when the ball hit the ground. That you can't write stuff up better than that. Then we get the real national title game and it's 65-7. To me, it was like that year that what was it, the Seahawks against Denver when Seahawks beat the crap out of Denver in the Super Bowl. That was the worst Super Bowl. I think it was the Lady Gaga. No, it wasn't Lady Gaga. I think I stayed for the halftime show and I was out. It might have been Bruno Mars this year. But I was out. But outside of that, it was just.
Would you have stayed for the fourth quarter here if you were in Georgia? Like, I mean,
oh fuck no. For one, I don't care about either of the two teams that much, and because like going to a national title game or a Super Bowl to me is like more of a moment than rooting for your team. Like if you have the ability to go to Super Bowl, you're gonna go no matter who goes.
Yeah.
If you have that chance to go that year, like you're not gonna always have the chance or the bread to go each year. So if you have the opportunity, you're going for that. But if somebody's getting waxed. Oh, I'm gonna. There's the thing about the Super Bowl is the city who hosts the Super Bowl turns into a different city.
It'd be
for the
lit,
week.
yeah. So
you're like, you can go out and get ready for whatever because there's after parties. There's like you can go out and just get pregame get set up for what you was going for the rest of the weekend. Because it's like to me, the Super Bowl turns whatever city it's into to like Vegas for the week. It's now an experience if you're down there for a few days. Like if you're not just going there for the game. Like if you see how they like all the sports shows and stuff go for the whole week, it changes the city, especially if it's in a dope city. Like, I've heard about, like, the Super Bowl, and like, you know why the Super Bowl keeps on going back to New Orleans? Because it's a dope city. Because it's one of the smallest cities in the NFL. Mm-hmm. New Orleans is a population-wise, it might have less population than Pittsburgh. Like, it's a comparable city size-wise.
They always lit.
It's lit.
Everybody goes down there. Mardi Gras latest time of the year.
43-8.
Yeah, 43-8. That is a Super Bowl where I'm leaving. Like,
what was that at?
Where was the game at?
Yeah.
That one I don't know.
It might say.
But
I mean, I'm leaving, and I guess
that's the last like legit.
I'm gonna get cheaper beers outside the stadium, so I mean,
Jersey. That was the New York Super Bowl too.
Bruno Mars. Okay, Jordan knew exactly who was up. I'm here for the halftime. No, I'm out.
Because you know why? Because
Bruno's shirt on.
You know why I remember that? Because Lady Gaga is the Patriots Falcons one. Because I went to sleep after the Falcons scored after halftime, and I thought that shit was over. I woke up the next morning and found out that the Patriots had done that the Falcons. I will never give the Patriots full credit for this Super Bowl. The Falcons choked away, and Matt Ryan choked away a whole ass Super Bowl. Because if I go to sleep in the Super Bowl, that means that y'all you had it, nigga. That's on y'all. That's on y'all. I don't give a fuck about who if it's Tom Brady.
It's a really good one.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I definitely did on that one. But yeah, man, no. Like if it's in a dope city, like that's what like the risk of like having the Super Bowl in like Minnesota is like. It's like, all right, man, let's get in the ass with. Like it's February in Minnesota too. What the fuck y'all about to go do? It's cold out there.
No, they got the dome, so it ain't that bad.
But again, the idea of like
the city.
Yeah, that's my point. Like if somebody's getting their ass kicked, if it's not close,
I guess so. Yeah, I can get a few more beers and I'll get warmed up. I'll leave then.
Like that's the difference. Like the year the Patriots and the Rams played, that game was boring. The game was close the whole game, but the game was fucking boring. It was like 13-9 or something. So you're kind of stuck there just watching a boring game, and it was in Atlanta. So if it was a blowout, you could go out and do some shit. Mm-hmm. But like. The idea that it was just a boring game and you're just stuck there watching it, the idea of just like, I don't know, like the whole ass kicking idea of it is just like, wow. So yeah, like just I don't know. Hope TCU bounces back.
How much?
Travel and all that. You
Oh,
get there and
the tickets were probably around
it's
$1,000.
35 to
Ooh.
7, and you're like, it's over already. I know.
Yeah, you know, you're
That was
like,
the
You
wildest
pay
part
for
about it.
halftime,
I did read one other thing. If the game had been Michigan Ohio State, the tickets probably would have been $2,000-3,000 because of the
Because
way.
yeah, oh yeah,
Oh no! First and foremost, if it would have been Michigan Ohio State, they might have had to bring in the national fucking guard.
damn.
I don't care how the game ended. Like it's like that
I don't
rivalry.
care how the game.
Like that game is different for like I like before we get out like the low key history. Like the one thing, the history of Michigan Ohio State is literally back behind shooting. Like the state of Ohio and the territory of Michigan fought over I think Toledo.
Okay.
Because there was like a misconception of like this topographical maps or something like where the government thought their land was cut between like the lake. There was a point on the lake where they were supposed to say like the land started here, and there was a point where like militias were sent out between the two states to fight about this shit, and it's like carried on from there to the football. Like so, it's like
Y'all taking it way too.
like no
serious.
matter how
Damn.
much I love the backyard brawl and how much some of y'all people love like Alabama, Auburn, and shit. Like the realest rivalry in sports to me, and it's like past like because I think college rivalries mean more than pro rivalries because they're older. They are older like most places, and I just baseball's old, but nobody gives a fuck about like baseball rivalries like that. Like it's contact sports where rivalries matter more to me, like football and hockey. Like when you physically could put your hands on somebody, a rivalry's different. Like that's why I think basketball rivalries have changed because like the rivalries in basketball were meant a little bit different when people was putting their hands on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the 80s and 90s and shit. Like when they was when they was putting their hands on each other back in the day, a basketball rivalry meant something. Then once it started not being like you can touch when people couldn't touch each people, that's also why I think like people can trade more and people don't stay on teams. Once you don't hate nobody because they put one of these into you a couple times, you'll be cool with them. Like niggas, like people was not cool with going. I'm not gonna go play with a dude that choked me up or choked one of my boys up in a game. Like, but yeah, man. Like I said, if it was Michigan Ohio State, that is the biggest rivalry in sports when it comes to just anger against fan bases.
Yo.
So, like that one's wild. But we're gonna get out of here. That was the first 10. Again, congratulations to Georgia, back-to-back national champions, and looks like a three-peat. So I do want to say that. But we are going to be out. Is the first 10 Unfiltered presented by Hustle. Again, I'm Jay Skyline
And James.
and Malachi behind the boards. We'll give it back to y'all.